Hi everybody. Oops. So yes, I've come all the way from Bristol today, my second time in Edinburgh. So I'm the GIS manager for Avon and Somerset Police, and the caveat for tonight is that this is just about Avon and Somerset Police. There's 48 police forces in the UK, and I only represent mine. We're not all the same, we all do things differently, so I can only talk about my experience. So I've been the manager for 5 years now for GIS, and I thought I'll start with my experience about how GIS has grown in the organisation. So basically, when I started in Avon and Somerset Police, I was a crime analyst to start with, and what we had was a simple desktop GIS. That was in 2004, and basically the only other people that had maps apart from analysts were command and control, which is when you phone 999. So that was it. So to make a map in the police, you had to go to people with the desktop GIS, and that was it. Then in 2007, there was a big project to kind of retender, and we had our first web GIS, and that was amazing. And police officers started to kind of look at digital maps on the web. And then in 2014, I became the GIS manager. And it took me 3 years to put enterprise GIS in it and then start to build that geospatial library so actually people could get stuff out of WebGIS, and this is where it starts to grow. And so hopefully by next year we'll have a whole set of specialist apps and loads of interactive documents and loads of data for them to use. But what that means in terms of maps, in terms of like the comparison between digital maps and paper maps, we came from everything being paper maps, because effectively with our desktop GIS you can only print off stuff, to now being about 80%. And there's a reason for that 80%, which I'll come back later, but you still need to get printed maps now and again. So why do we have maps in the police in Avon and Somerset? Basically a lot of it is about location anyway. So if you think about it, first good reason to have maps is that we're emergency service, so if you phone 999, if you don't say where you are, we can't really go and help you. So the first thing that a call handler would say, actually, is, okay, where are you? And then tell us what's happened. So that's why we need location. Then it's quite useful to resource our officers, so we're going to have to dispatch them, but we can also plan for events or where we're going to deploy people. So we see having their location is very important, and all officers have got GPS on their radios. It's useful for data recording. So geography and location is the common language between loads of database we've got. So whether you talk about an incident, a crime, an intelligence report, there's always a location that links to it. We call it the POL, so people, object, location, event, and basically location is what links all these three together. So people are linked to a location, events are linked to a location, and objects are linked to a location. So basically it helps massively with data recording, because we use gazetteers as a reference table, and then it's all kind of supposed to be linked to that address, and then data quality should increase. And it's useful for analysis. So we have lots of analysts, so whether it's crime analysts or business analysts, who look at our information and analyze it. And some of the analysis we do is spatial analysis. There's loads of criminological theories, like the routing activity theories, that actually explain how location can be a factor in criminal behaviours. So it's very important to do that. And then we look at where things happen in general to find preventative projects and things like that to kind of deal with it in the long term. And then finally, we use maps for telling a story. So whether it's a report for the chief officers or for an investigator, or whether it's to present evidence in court. And ultimately, really, all it is to make a decision. So they need the information, we give the information with the location as a map most of the time, and they can make the decision, whether it's a jury, whether it's a police officer, an investigator, etc. So I'm going to give you some operational examples, and I'm going to really brush through because there's loads, but you can tell me after what you think. But our first point of call is command center, so that's when you call 999. And so I've done an example of what our mapping looks like in command and control. This is a scenario of someone calling in to say there's a bomb threat in the middle of Bristol. Hopefully it's not going to happen. But it's just to show that the call handler can plot the incident, can put a cordon around to kind of evacuate people. They can start closing roads, set an RV point, put up CCTV cameras to see whether they can follow up or find later on some evidence. Very broad. But basically, this is like an extreme example. There's loads of stuff on it. Then we've got neighborhood policing. So this is more the frontline officers that are there to reassure and deal with the public effectively. So we have like BI tools with maps to show demands. So what they'll probably do at the beginning of a shift is go to that and then have a look at what's happened in the last 24 hours and then decide where they're going to patrol and look at what's happened. We have maps about neighborhoods, so they can find out in interactive maps what their community is composed of, how many people there are, how many schools there are, that kind of stuff. And we use maps as well to consult with our neighbourhood staff when we want to change the beat boundaries, because staffing is based on beats. So when there's changes, we kind of do some horrible maps like this. Then we've got the more strategic kind of intervention. So our police crime commissioner decide the priorities and what we're going to work on. So for that, they do a lot of strategic analysis, again through BI tools and data drilling, but also through GIS and an analyst looking at long-term patterns and things. And for investigation, so detectives start an investigation, and they usually have crime analysts to help them with the operation. So things like cell site analysis, they do to have a look at if suspect victims, where were they at what time, and then you might have other representation like the ones on the side with like link charts saying which phone, and then which mask were they using, and then stuff for court. So the first one on the left shows the movements of a victim and a suspect and how they met, and then the one on the right is an exhibit to court for a case where there was a road collision and killing a member of the public. But it's just to show the variety of like products that you can get. And finally, operational planning is about planning for events. So whether it's a football match, a festival like Glastonbury, emergency like a flood or whatever. So they do use loads of maps. They still use a lot of paper maps. But usually they've got their plans like this and they use grids to say where to put people in. But now we're trying to do like a more of an interactive document using story maps, for example. So this is a really quick overview. So the good thing about democratizing mapping is that now it's self-service. A lot of people are happy. I'm happy because it's quicker for me as well. I'm not the bottleneck in the organization trying to do maps. They access information faster, and it's a much better return on investment for us. However, it has its challenges. And some of the challenges are, so all police officers have web maps on their phone, and they've got high expectation. They always come back saying, I don't like your base map, Oliver, I want a Google map. Or, I don't like your base map, I want OpenStreetMap. And I'm like, yeah, but, and they've got different preferences, so in fact, I need to kind of think which one can I pick that everybody's going to be happy with, whether it's for a court or not. You need to kind of think about the broad range of products. There's also some consideration about data security, because now they've got it on their screens, they can access it. They could just do a screen dump or download data and then share it. So at the moment, we're not putting too much contentious things in, but there's some auditing that we need to do. And there's more and more apps being out there, so they're getting confused and they're saying, oh, which one is it? So we're trying to kind of organize our products so it makes more sense for each department. And then also, one of the big challenges for me, I've got a GIS background, but I'm not like a cartographer per se, and the symbology is locked for them, so I need to think about every single layer of information in the organisation that is in that data library and find a symbology that's not going to conflict with another one, a unique symbology effectively. And it's quite hard because there's about 30 different crimes, and it gets quite ugly. But anyway, and then the problem is also they dump too many, because it's self-service, they might dump too many stuff on the same map and it becomes really horrible. And then because they're not cartographers, they will probably do a screenshot and forget to put the north arrow or the stuff that you're supposed to do with the scale and everything. So it's quite cringing at times, but the main thing is they get the information, because effectively my job is not to make a pretty map. I'm kind of trying to live with that. It's to be functional, because at the end of the day, they're there to respond to something. They need to be there to kind of either come and help you or arrest someone. So it's about the criticality, and then we haven't got time really to make pretty maps. We're trying to, but it's in slow time really. So what the maps have to do with policing, hopefully you've seen that it's quite a lot. But effectively, in the next few years, I'd like it to be totally green, that it does have everything to do with policing. I still have to convince a few people, but I'm really lucky because my organisation is really keen on GIS and has invested quite a lot, so that's good. So if you've got any questions, fire away. Also, I am part of the geospatial women group, Women in Geospatial, so if you want to talk about it, I've got some cards to give out. But yeah, fire away.